Welcome back to For the Sake of the Argument. Today we had Pontiac City Councilman Mikal Goodman on to talk about his experience as a young socialist elected official, how Democrats can regain ground with the working class, I pray God they can, and affordable housing, accessible affordable housing, which is the biggest problem in our country right now. Well, I guess there are so many. But anyway, if you want to see more of these, and I hope you do, follow us on social media, all social media, and we'll see you next time. Mikal Goodman, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's really great to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
Let's get right into it.
Okay.
You were elected in 21,
Yes.
at the age of 21, to the
Yes.
Pontiac City Council. Holy that's young. What I think everyone wants to know is, how did that feel? And did people, not only your constituents, but your co-council members, did they take you seriously?
So I announced that I was running for office at 20. Like I was 10 days before actually turning 21. And I mean, a lot of people who had knew me from the couple years I had been doing politics prior to that, like being chair of the Young Dems and so on and so forth. Like they kind of like, okay, cool, we're rocking with this. I think a lot of the community had seen me and also saw my opponent, which is like, okay, yeah, anything's better than her. And like I think even my constituents, there was a subsection of them who were like, you're too young to be in office. Like we're not going to vote for you. You're not going to win. You're too young, which I proved them wrong because obviously they swore me in. I never really had a problem with my like colleagues. I think the biggest thing is obviously as a black man in a black city, there's like some black paternalism that happens sometimes with one of my colleagues. But for the most part, they respect the ideas that I bring, specifically in the land that I focus on, because it's what I do. It's housing, and I'm the only person that sits in that so deeply to a point where they kind of just trust me on it, and it works out. It allows me to have my lane where they kind of just know things are going.
Do you think that today, 2025, that it's something that people are looking for more youth in elected officials? So is it more of an asset these days than it was back when you ran in 21?
Yes. However, I put like an asterisk on that because I think a lot of people obviously want more youthful people because there is an assumption that with younger people are coming different ideas, more time relevant ideas, or sometimes the assumption that they're just more progressive, right? So there's an advantage of people kind of assuming what some of my policies are due to the fact that I'm young, but also there's also this just general feeling of, yeah, there are a lot of old people in politics and maybe like there should be younger people in there. There's this somewhat understanding that time moves on and therefore the people in office should do the same. And I feel like, especially now over the Biden administration and now, having two extremely old presidents back to back and an increasingly aging legislature at multiple different levels, people are like, yeah, it's a benefit. It's improved for sure.
So, Mikal, you're the co-chair of the Detroit Democratic Socialists of America. This label, and I know this personally, because I kind of like what you guys are selling, can be very polarizing to people. How do you handle that when you're knocking on doors, campaigning for new voters, or even with your co-council people? Do you get a lot of pushback, or do you make it even well known that you are?
Yeah, I mean, I am very openly a socialist, right? And it's a thing that, like, when I talk to my constituents and a lot of people, like, I don't just leave like the word socialism in the air by itself. People make assumptions. Be it the assumptions aren't typically wrong. It's just found in the wrong place. Like the first thing that I can think of is it's very much around I want to provide basic needs and improve the quality of life for people. Like there is a very deep history in the Midwest of what is known as like sewer socialism. The idea that
What was that?
Sewer socialism.
Sewer socialism. Okay.
And it's, really grounded in the idea that at the end of the day, the things that we should be focusing on should be improving like people's actual quality of life, providing public goods. So like repairing roads, providing public parks, doing the things in which you would assume that governments should be doing to maintain and improve people's quality of life. And when I'm going to doors, whether it be in my community or other communities around Metro Detroit, it's always like, yes, I'm a member of DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, because they always assume Detroit School of the Arts whenever you just say DSA in the ether in Metro Detroit. But, actually going through the process of explaining, like, these are what our policies are. We're fighting for Medicare for all. We're fighting against slumlords. We're fighting for tenants unions. We're fighting for affordable housing, depending on how much they know, social housing, co-ops. Like the idea that not only should your government be providing for you, but your community should be empowered to also empower and deliver itself. So for me, as being an elected official, I kind of have this ability not just to talk about what is DSA. I kind of get to show in practice like what some of those policies look like. Being on city council in Pontiac, my biggest issue, the thing that I fight for the most, the thing that I make a lot of traction on, is fighting landlords and slumlords and fighting for like improved housing quality. And the entire 4 years that I've been in office now has been me hammering that issue endlessly about how we need to improve the quality of life for renters in our city. How, the city can actually take a chance to step in and do some of the work that the landlords are not doing, actually doing the government's job of, having accountability. And over time, actually, this is a very funny thing. I'm glad that you brought this up. The other day, I was talking to one of the people who endorsed me for my city council race. She is she used to be a school board member. She's now running for library board. And someone had went to her and said, "Hey, you're on Mikal's literature. Like, did you know that?" And she was like, "Yeah, of course I knew. Like, he didn't just secretly put me on there." And then they were like, "Well, did you know that he's a socialist?" And she's like, "Yeah, I know that. It doesn't matter to me." And it's this understanding that, okay, like 4 years ago, that might have been a thing where someone might have, been a little iffy about, but even then it didn't really happen. But now they have a track record of mine to know what me being a socialist looks like and what it means. And so like, I think it's less of a scary word now than it ever has been, and polling shows that too. But more importantly, I think a lot of us have had a chance between like me, between Rashida, between Dylan. People disagree with me when I say this, but like with Gabby and other DSA members elected all over the state and across the country, is that we have shown through our policies and through our actions like what DSA leadership looks like for communities.
To me, and I didn't know much, and I still don't know as much as I should, I think socialism is providing for the many goods and services, making government better for many instead of few. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't think they all want to aspire to be in the few. Like they're never going to get there because that's why it's a few.
Everyone's a temporarily embarrassed millionaire. And by temporarily embarrassed, usually that means permanently embarrassed. You will never get that money.
Yeah. And it's not the end of the world. I wanted to mention something. I sell real estate, and I want you to remember that if you're ever looking for a home or a lease. But yesterday, I was showing leases to a young woman, a single mother of one child, who has a job at Henry Ford Hospital. She is living with her child in a homeless shelter because even though she has a job, she has a past, she has bad credit rating, she wasn't able to cobble together enough money even to live in a shithole, which the rents were way too high, $1,500 to live in a place that I wanted to take a bath after I left because they didn't even fix the steps that were crumbling. It smelled like there was mold in there. And this woman is trying to find affordable housing. So It's really important. Housing is a fucking important thing, and it should be more important to our electeds.
So I do want to talk on that because like that's a perfect example of the things that are like actively happening to the vast majority of people who live in this country. Because I mean, again, Pontiac is 64% renter. Almost 2/3 of the people who live in Pontiac are renting, and you know that number is decently large in almost every Black and Brown community across the state of Michigan. Ypsilanti, I think, has like a percentage also that high. I don't know what Detroit's is off the top of my head, but that is a perfect example of what is the government doing. Where are the departments and the taxes that we're paying? What are they actually doing? Because when it comes to rentals, and I hate to get like really nerdy about this for a second, but this is literally all I do. The city should have a rental registry. They should know every rental that is in the city, when it's last been inspected, so on and so forth. So the city has a duty in keeping track of the quality and the amount of housing that they have in their community. But more importantly than that, when people make complaints, the city should be saying, hey, landlord, you must go fix this. And if you don't go fix this, there will be tickets, there will be fines, until the point where if you don't fix it, we will fix it and then charge it to you. And I say it that way because that's what Pontiac has been doing. Like we have an escrow ordinance that like, if the city pulls a certificate of compliance, I'm not going to get into explaining all the nerdy stuff around that. The tenant can come into the city, put their money into an escrow account run by the city, and during that period in time when their certificate of compliance is pulled, the landlord is not legally allowed to collect rent, period. So if during the course of a month, the landlord does not come into compliance, that entire rent check that the tenant has put in escrow with the city goes back to the tenant. There is no back rent, and if the landlord still hasn't fixed it yet, we start the process over again. And it's a way of like forcing landlords to not get paid until you actually fix a critical issue. And it's because I'm a bit of a bully to them. It's because at some point someone has to bully them. Someone has to force them to do their job. And what better entity to do that than the city government, which I think also goes to a key part of, you know, DSA, which is the idea that the government should be doing things that actually improve your life, not just the pockets of whatever benefactor and corporation has decided to buy a brownfield in your community.
Hallelujah to that. So I think a lot of people want to know, I know I do, what does a city council person do? Is it a full-time or a part-time job? And I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you, but how much do you get paid for doing it?
So there's two parts to this. Depending on the city that you're in, it could be full-time, it could be part-time. It's like the city of Detroit is a full-time city council. Luckily and unluckily, I am not a city council person in Detroit, so I'm not getting paid, like I think it's like over $90,000. But when you have like a district that is, you know, the joke is I talked to Gabby Santiago Romero, who is a city council person in Detroit for the Southwest. Me and her are very good friends.
I know her and love her.
Her district is larger than my entire city. So like there is kind of perspective there where it's like, yeah, it kind of makes sense that you are a full-time council person and you have an entire staff department. In Pontiac and in most other communities, it's part-time. So that can be, you know, a meeting every week, which was what the city of Pontiac was doing for many years. We had to have a city council meeting every single week, still considered part-time. And now we've moved to like twice a month, which is like what most communities do. I make from the city, I believe it's like $19,000 a year, which has gone up since we were first in office. I think it was like 16 then, which is like the whole like local officers compensation committee, because we don't decide how much we make. A local officers compensation committee decides it, and the council is the one that accepts or ratifies what their suggestion is. That's done on like off years. So like there's like a nice little staggering to it. And like I don't really like complain about the pay. Funny enough, when I ran the first time, I kind of didn't know that it paid. And then when I found out that it did pay, based on what the charter says, like it was a much lower amount. So it was negligible to even think about. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'm just doing this. I had no plans for it. And then upon like getting elected and figuring out like, oh, we actually get like a like once a month paycheck that is actually like decent in additional money. I use that to pay my rent. I very much treat that check that I get from the city as like my stipend to pay to be a council person. Like I pay my rent and my bills through that. Cause it's like, yeah, I want to just be able to do this job and just focus on it. And that's kind of how I look at it. Our full-time, so our council president has become full-time. And so like he makes $75,000, which again, to be a full-time government official and be the only full-time legislator in a body when you have an entirely full-time executive branch, it makes sense. And it's actually useful to have someone from our side who is constantly working every single day because the rest of us aren't. Like none of us are in our offices day to day unless we choose to be. And most of us, as you can hear, if we only make $20,000 from council, most of us have to have a job. You know, there are a couple of us who are like retired. Like there are some older people on council. There's a pastor, someone who retired from GM. But most of us, if not the rest of us, have to work a job in addition to being on council, which is both a positive in terms of having real life experience and being able to relate to people who don't just legislate all day for their job. But at the same time, there's a lot of work to be done. Like no matter how part-time city council you want it to be, if you're doing your job, you're around the clock doing things. And that's kind of difficult when you're working a full-time job to sustain your lifestyle in what is a capitalist hellscape in which everything is getting more expensive every single day and we have no sort of stability. So
I just felt so sorry for you. I don't think you're going to be able to retire for like 70 more years. Holy hell.
Retire?
Yeah.
That's a thing that I get to do?
No, you're right if you're lucky. Sorry, if you're lucky.
The millennial dream of buying a home is already like out of my grasp and I have really long arms. The idea of retiring, I'll probably be like shoveling nuclear waste somewhere in my old age.
Okay.
In the exclusion zone.
All right. So listen, you already shared, I think, what your biggest passion is in Pontiac, and that's finding, ways to create and provide affordable housing to citizens. But what's the biggest challenge, in your opinion, that Pontiac faces right now?
When it comes to at the city level, I mean, just making sure that we're able to actually, again, like provide quality, consistent services and improve the quality of life for a city in which was completely disinvested from during the recession when GM left the city and took almost every single job and every bit of economic wealth with it. In terms of a legislative perspective, there are a lot of things that me and other local electeds would love to be able to do to make our citizens' lives better, like rent control, or having, increased local wages or so on and so forth. But we can't do any of those things because they're all preempted at the state level. And so our hands are tied in terms of being able to take really big swings to solve a lot of our city's problems. On top of that, if you go to like the federal level, no one has money. Like there's obviously the ARPA funds and so on and so forth. But again, through years of disinvestment in infrastructure and all types of levels of our community, the amount of investment needed to get to where we should be is increasing every single year. The idea of deferred maintenance, like it's going to keep getting more expensive to fix the problems that we're trying to fix if we don't get in early. And so I think it's an issue that a lot of cities are dealing with in a bunch of different ways, which is simply their hands are tied and they're making do with a lot less than they should have. And I think that's very difficult because, I mean, it's almost as if you are yourself living as a poor person. And I'm saying that from like personal experience. There comes a point where you have to pay your bills at the end of the month. You have to pay rent. You have to pay, God forbid, you have a car note and insurance in Michigan because that shit's expensive. But also having to pay for groceries. God forbid you have a child because there's childcare. At some point, one of those bills is not getting paid, or something that you should be doing is not getting taken care of and is going to get worse. So if we're in a situation of having to decide if we're paying for road repairs here or infrastructure over here, or being forced to pay a third of our city budget to the Oakland County Sheriff for our public safety contract, where does the money come for doing anything of substance, like, trying to improve our city's public health? Like trying to, build public housing or have a city-run grocery store, which is the thing I'm working on. But At some point, you cannot afford to fix the problems that are going to continue to get worse. And that's just a collective problem because there are increasing problems and decreasing resources for solutions unless we get really fucking creative.
It's a lot of stuff you have to think about for $19,000 a year. Holy cow. There's been a lot of talk about how Dems are struggling to connect with especially young men, especially young men of color, whether it's a cultural or economic or just straight up messaging failure on Dems' part. And I want to tell you a little story very quickly. I was approached by two women from the French press. It sounds like I'm talking about a coffee maker, but two women from France wanted to shadow me for a day. Well, that puts a lot of pressure because what am I going to show you? Me selling real estate or cleaning out my bathroom? So I took them to Pontiac because they wanted to see an area of diversity. I drove them into Pontiac. I thought they would have a plan. They didn't. So what I did, I'd see people out in the street. So I saw 5 or 6 individuals. I think 4 or 5 were men, 1 was a woman. We stopped, all ages, and I think most of them were people of color. We stopped, got out of the car, apologized for interrupting them, cutting their grass or whatever they were doing, and said, hey, did you vote in the last presidential election? 201. They all said no. And it didn't matter if they were young or old. We asked why, and they said, back to us, why? It does nothing. Why should I take time? Why should I worry about it? It does nothing for me. So what do you think it's going to take to penetrate people's consciousness, understanding about how important voting is when they haven't seen the evidence?
The way in which we win these people back is by fucking doing things. I don't think it can be as further simply stated than that. The biggest issue, and it's given to you in their response of, okay, why didn't we vote? Why would we? Because for the longest time, the Democratic Party has done a pretty piss poor job at actually delivering on the things that working class people actually need. I mean, it's sometimes as simple as the fact that it took until a pandemic for us to receive additional money for children to be able to, to cut childhood poverty. It took us going into an actual pandemic, showing people that could have been done all along. So why hadn't it? We look at other countries around the world who have vastly better education systems, who have any lick of public transit. I mean, you could take someone from America. The American mind cannot comprehend European transit. At some point, especially when you have access to be able to see things that are happening around the world at all points in time and seeing the dramatically better life quality that other people are going through or, benefiting from. And every single year, every single vote is the most important vote in the world, but nothing within your daily material life is changing. At some point, why would you continue to participate in a thing which you say is going to change your life and proceeds to not? And if it does, it only seems to change it for the worse. And that applies to all levels of government. And arguably, it's kind of worse because at local government, that is the moment when every single vote matters, because those are people who are getting your trash picked up. Those are people who are fixing your roads, right? But there has been this very deep disinvestment by the Democratic Party from actually handling the needs of the working class. It has truly just become the art of lip service. And don't get me wrong, it's genuinely creative how they've been able to, extend the ruse for as long as they've been able to keep getting votes the way that they do. But now a lot of people are seeing the lack of action on their behalf. And it's become even steeper because we talk about their loss in terms of Black and brown voters, especially men, which it's less that these black and brown men are voting for the opposition. They're just simply not voting. It's, between do they go out to vote or do they stay on the couch? But if we look at something that has happened recently, which is so amazing, Zohran Mamdani winning the primary in New York, he was able to rebuild a coalition in which the Democratic Party had long given up on. I mean, sure, at older ages, black men were I think, breaking for Cuomo. But the generations that typically don't vote, being the younger generation, the 19 to 35 demographic, Zohran was voted by, most popularly by black and brown men, if I remember correctly. And that's not just a matter of, oh, I happen to be a young brown man and I'm now talking to you. It very much showed that having real conversations with real people and actually going into places where you may feel pushed back on are important. But on top of anything, his entire campaign has been speaking to the issues in which are affecting the people in which voted for him. Talking about a rent freeze that affects people who are living in subsidized rent-controlled housing in New York. I'm not saying that that's a colored-based thing, but we know how poverty breaks down in our country due to the spreading of wealth. So, we were talking about fast and free buses. A lot of working class people are riding those buses. A lot of working class people are black and brown, especially in a lot of these communities. Talking about city-run grocery stores. Pontiac is a fucking food desert. So I deeply understand the need of having a municipal grocery store or a co-op or a city subsidized grocery store or whatever the fuck. And for him to make the argument that we should have one in every single borough, those are touching to things that are across multiple boundaries. But he made a very concerted effort to point out, this is why this is important. This is why I'm fighting for this, because not just because I feel that, in my progressive heart that we should be doing this, but it's because I've been listening. I've been going to places. I've been talking to people. And this is what people are concerned about. And I think the Democratic Party did a little bit more of actually acting on the thing that they've heard for decades at this point. We would not be losing continuously. If we did any of the shit that we actually campaign on, in my opinion, we would never lose to the Republican Party again. Because at some point, it's we have massively improved unions. We have provided everyone health care. We've increased affordability. And these fuckers want to take it away. But you can't create that juxtaposition if you haven't done the shit. You just seem as if you are on the exact same level as them.
Got it.
And to people who are not paying attention, why would they participate in something that, to them, feels like nothing's going to change?
So listen, we've known each other a few years now. And when I first met you, it was at some event, fundraiser, don't remember, but somebody brought me up and introduced me to you as the founder of Femmes for Dems. And I don't remember exactly what you said, but you were real with me. And you said something about that you thought Femmes for Dems might have been a little bit of a racist organization. And I appreciated your honesty in conveying what your thoughts were, because I live in fear of people thinking that. I'm very sensitive to the fact, I grew up in Ecorse. I grew up with Mexicans, black people. Do you feel better about Femmes now that you know a little bit more what we're doing? And if you don't, that's cool too, because I'm always looking for suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, I feel better. And at that point, it's very much the awareness that, unfortunately, in a lot of liberal democratic left-leaning spaces, when I say left-leaning, for the people who are listening who are actual socialists, you will know that when I say left-leaning, I mean anything left of center, which is usually not killing the homeless for sport. Unfortunately, in a lot of these spaces that are led predominantly by middle to upper middle class white women, tend to have the habit of very much just ignoring or tokenizing the issues and voices of black and brown people who they are working with, right? let's be clear, your organization has gotten much better on the diversity area, and also I say decently better in your politics.
That might just be me. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, now that one of my friends is also on the board of Films for Dems,
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, things have definitely been shifting. So I think you. And I think a lot of people have been able to like shift with the times of like the understanding that like, wow, the way in which we were going about things before has kind of shown to not be working. Because like, I'll just say it's like the change in terms of the people and issues and candidates that Films for Dems associates with years ago to now is different if you're paying attention, and that doesn't just come from just sticking your tongue on your finger and putting it in the air and feeling where the wind goes. There actually is some like level of analysis where it's like, yep,
Learning curve.
there's a learning curve, but it's also like a thing that I think a lot of people like societally have been going through.
I got you. Okay, I appreciate that. All right, now my favorite part. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We'll let the seatbelt unlock after you answer the lightning round questions.
Absolutely.
Okay. You get one political endorsement from a fictional character. Who's it going to be?
Jesus. Nah, I actually have to. It's not Jesus. No. I mean, actually, that would be a great one. I mean, to have
That's fictional to some.
oh, we're gonna get canceled for this one already. It's like the brown peaceful man who went into the temple of the money changers and flipped over the table because they were gambling in the house of his father. I mean, that's a socialist story if I've ever heard one.
Okay, that's a good answer.
So yeah, I'll stick it there.
I think that's good. All right, being a socialist means never shutting up about what?
The people.
Fair enough. What's the last show you binge watched and loved?
Oh God. Okay. So for me, unfortunately, I have to say it is The Ultimatum. I love really shitty reality TV. Like, if I could have been around during the time of like MTV and like Big Brother, had I been like, a little bit older at a younger point in time, I would have had a problem.
The Ultimatum, what is it, an ultimatum about?
So a couple goes on to the show. Like, there's multiple sets of couples, and one of them wants to get married, like has decided like I want to be with this person. The other person is not so sure about getting married or doesn't want to get married. So they come on the show and with a bunch of different couples who are in the same exact situation. And then for 3 weeks, they like essentially swap with somebody else that they choose to be with. And for 3 weeks are kind of married to them to see like how they feel about the concept of marriage.
Do they have sex with these people?
So that is a point of contention because sometimes it happens because after those 3 weeks, they go back to their original partner. And so it gets extremely messy very fast.
I might have to cut this short and go watch that right now. Okay, that sounds like it's not so bad to binge. What app do you waste the most time on, and no judgment?
It would be between like YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. And I say that because they're entirely different things. I listen to a lot of video essays and a lot of Hasanabi clips throughout the day. Like I don't watch the podcast, like the stream. I am watching like the hour and a half like clips that are cut by the Hasanabi industrial complex all day long. And then I just mindlessly scroll on Facebook because unfortunately a lot of my base of people are people in your age demographic.
I apologize for us all.
And unfortunately most of you use Facebook still.
And I'll never stop. I'll pry it out of my cold fucking dead hands. All right, what's more sus? Billionaires who love philanthropy or dudes who say they're fiscally conservative but socially liberal?
This is hard. And it is because, like, I hate all billionaires. I mean, to be a billionaire, you are literally just exploiting people. There is no way that you reach that point of wealth without fucking multiple people over. So I'd say that. However, I do need to drop in the point that I do think that libertarians, because those are people who say that, I'm fiscally conservative and socially liberal. It's like, I understand that you don't understand policy, and that's okay. Your econ class did not prepare you for life, but that's okay. Work on it. Touch grass.
All right, last question. What's one piece of advice you'd give to another young person who wants to make change in their community but does not know how? One piece of advice.
Be authentic. Be authentic to yourself, your community, and your issues. When you start selling yourself out because you're trying to make it ahead, that's when you start fucking up. So just be authentic.
That's good advice. Thank you so much, Mikal, for being here today. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.